Hello and welcome to Men in Progress, the podcast of United Methodist Men of Trietsch here in Flower Mound, Texas. We're part of the Life Plus God podcast series from Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church. We drop a new podcast every Tuesday, and we really appreciate your listening to this episode. My name's Dave Casey, and if you've listened to our podcast before, you know we're just a bunch of guys, knuckleheads really, trying to be better men and live better lives in our walk with God. In this episode of Men in Progress, we're tackling a topic that we all struggle with from time to time, and that's how to break the bad habits of sinful behavior. You know, as Christians, it's not enough to talk a good game. Jesus told us people will know we're followers not by what we say, but by how we act. As disciples, we certainly want to follow the straight and narrow, but we're also human, which means we fail at that a lot. To help me discuss why that is and how we can do a better job breaking the habit of sinful behavior, I'm joined by three of my brothers from Trietsch, Barrett Pliler, Andy Juett, and Trinity Vaughn. Guys, welcome to Men in Progress.
Howdy. Thanks for having us.
Howdy.
You're welcome.
So I got to start with a big question. Any sinners here?
No,
not
at all.
Wow, that's going to be the shortest podcast on record.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's so tough? I'm just going to not accept your answer. So why do you think it's so tough to break sinful behavior? I want to start with Andy.
You know, sin, I think, is like a bad habit. Bad habits are hard to break.
Oh, yeah. Once you get in them.
Yeah, and it's changing behaviors. And that's not an easy thing to do a lot of times.
Yep, for sure. Trinity, how about yourself?
Some of those sinful behaviors can be a lot of fun, and I think that makes it very difficult to want to quit doing them. It's one of those things where as we get older and we start learning what we've been doing wrong, it's hard to admit that, and it's kind of hard to stop when you're already in the groove.
Yeah,
it's definitely
well, certainly society, Barrett. I mean, society kind of encourages us, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's all you have to do is watch television, go to the internet, whatever you need, and it's there's encouragement there. So, is there any particular? I'll put you back on the spotlight. Is there any particular behavior you struggle with more than others?
I was hoping you didn't ask me this question.
See, I won't ask everyone the same question. So,
because when I saw the topic after Michael did the invite, I almost wrote him back and said I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Absolutely, there's different behaviors. Yeah, there's some that you can kind of just push away on a daily basis, but there's also some that are, like Andy referred to, it's just hard to break. Yeah, and I think all of us are probably guilty of it. It's just
absolutely,
it's a struggle.
Yeah, and it's the thing that it's at least we're conscious of it, right? There are people there that exhibit these behaviors that aren't really conscious that what they're saying and doing is particularly bad,
Right.
And to me, that's harder for me to accept, but then I don't want to be in a position of judging them, So it's it makes it really tough. So where do you see? Is there any particular environment that you guys can name that maybe helps with that behavior, or helps probably the wrong word, encourages?
I think social media is a huge encouragement for a lot of people in terms of sinning. I think the level of discourse that we now have in our lives is a lot worse than it used to be.
Yeah.
And I think that people feel like they have the right to just say whatever they want without any consequence, whereas we didn't have that back in my day, so to speak. And so I really do. I look at our generational change as we've been going through it, and I see sin now in a different way than what I think it would have been had there not been, say, the internet or social media or just that level that we have access to today. Not to say that I don't want to have that access, because I love the communication and the ability to connect and the quick access to so many things, but there is a downside to it, and sin is bred really well in that environment, that petri dish. So
everything's on a spotlight.
Absolutely.
True. Now, Andy, I don't know about where you grew up, but in West Texas, but where I grew up, there was a bad side of town, right?
That's exactly right.
And now the bad side of town is on your phone, which is kind of hard to deal with. So Do you have any particular tricks or anything you do to try to, mediate that or mitigate that, I guess is a word?
Not really. I mean, I have been in situations in the workplace where I've worked around people that didn't have the same values or whatever, and that made it hard because you just have to keep your values and try to keep that staying on track no matter what's going on around you.
Yeah, that's not the easiest thing. It's interesting. For most of my career, I've been in sales, so. And with sales, there's a lot of tendency. There's whining and dining and, taking people out. And depending on the nature of the business that you're in, maybe want to go out to a strip joint or something like that. And I've managed to avoid that, for the great majority of my career.
Good for you, Dave.
Yeah, but there's some, I was not in an industry where that was a big deal, but there are some industries where that's the primary place you go to sell stuff, I guess. And to me, that'd be very hard, and I remember our good friend Sonny Gann, who was a member at Trietsch for many years, and he worked for AT&T. AT&T is a high-level company. He said, but there's a whole echelon of people there that he ran into that did not entertain and wine and dine the way he liked to do things. So he said, I just probably sacrificed a little bit in my career, but I didn't go along with that. So it's pretty tough. I'll flip that around since I hit you so hard with this last one.
That's because I'm sitting next to you.
Yeah, that must be it. So I'm going to flip that around and say, are you conscious of times when you've seen a positive environment actually help somebody that's struggling with that behavior?
I think you changed the question.
Oh, you read ahead.
I did read ahead.
Well, where you've been a positive influence, maybe is a way.
Wow, no. I mean, yes, there is. Right, you have to have like-minded people around you. First off, you mentioned it earlier with values, so
that's helpful.
It's always wise to surround yourself with some folks that not only have those values, but they could be going through the same struggles, but they're also focused on getting better. So whether or not we're guilty of it, because we're all guilty, but we have to surround ourselves with people that can admit it, can be vulnerable, and want to do better. So,
yeah, and I've seen it even in small things. I mean, I've been known to have a drink once in a while. I mean, I guess I'm Irish. I guess the way it works, maybe. But, I've got a lot of friends that are recovering alcoholics, and I'm very conscious of that. So if we're going to have a gathering at the house or something, I'll ask them ahead of time, do you have a problem if we have any alcohol at the gathering? Or sometimes it's no problem at all. And others would say, well, if you have a choice, I'd choose that we didn't do that, and that's, to me, that's a real way to build a positive, environment for someone maybe. And again, not everybody's coming from the same place on that. So, it's a different type of thing. So Trinity, as a Christian, do you think there's a responsibility for us to be that positive influence?
I do. I think growing up, I always looked at the people that didn't act how my parents acted. My parents, I guess, qualify as Christian in the sense that they say they are. But when it came to going to church and doing all the other things, we really didn't. And the people that did, we had some of the members of our family, we really looked at them, I don't want to say to look down on them, but we looked at them as people who weren't fun.
Yeah,
which is a good way to explain it. Especially as a child. As a child, it was they don't go out with us. They don't go to restaurants with us. They don't go to the bar, or they go wherever we would be going as a family. And now I look at that from a totally different perspective, because while I don't act in that capacity exactly, I also am trying to be a responsible adult, and I'm trying to make good choices that my children can hopefully mimic. And I see, as a Christian and as hopefully a leader in the community and in the church, that if I act like an idiot, people will think that's a permission to do the same. And I can't say that I'm that powerful, but it just seems like if I saw somebody that I looked up to and I said, oh yeah, he's out there being goofy, I'll do the same thing. Yeah. That's not the right way to go about it. So
yeah, and I think, again, if you identify as a Christian, then right away people are just checking you to see if you're a hypocrite. Right?
Absolutely,
do that. So and I don't know if you've run into that, Andy. Do you have one of those fish on the back of your truck? I can't remember.
No, I don't have a fish.
So you can run the lights then with
That's
with
right.
impunity.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I can cut you off if I need to. So.
I don't know if that's a sinful behavior, but it's certainly irresponsible. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I don't like any identifying marks on my vehicle.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
It's better that way. Yeah, it is better that way. Oh, man. Well, I think about what you were saying, Trinity, was interesting because I grew up as a Catholic, and I remember with school, there's all kinds of kids in school, all kinds of religions, represented, or different Christian religions mainly. But they would kind of quiz me, hey, you guys are gambling over there, in the basement, because we had a bingo games in the basement as a fundraiser, right? And I just thought, of course, I'm a kid. It's just a bingo game.
It's a game.
We play bingo all the time, And I had no clue there was money changing hands.
Right.
So it was, it's if you're clueless, I guess.
Well, and to your hypocrisy statement, I think as a person who goes out to a bar and drinks, or goes out to, I don't know, concerts or anything, any number of things that some people might view as sinful, I don't hide it. I don't see any point in pretending that I'm not the person I am, but I also try and make sure that I'm responsible in that, because I don't want people to see me doing something and thinking, oh, wow, look at you Christian, you're over there doing that, but you're saying something else. I'm not saying anything. Yeah. I'm doing exactly what I told you could do too. Like, just do it in moderation and behave yourselves.
Well, Andy knows there's a guy in our Sunday school class, so he is lifelong Methodist, and he says he has a Scotch and Cigars ministry that he does.
Nice.
Hey, however you get God into the home. That's
right.
the only way.
I don't know if that was in the home. He did it more
Or into the
more in
public.
the bar room, or in the bar room.
I wanted to add to something Trinity just said about, acting as you should. And I've seen a lot of stuff lately about hypocrisy in the church, or hypocrisy as being a Christian. And I think we even had a sermon about that recently. And my answer to that is, I'm a Christian and I'm at church because I'm a sinner, right?
Yes.
We're here because we know we are sinners. We know we screw up from time to time. We know we've hurt people. So how else can we get better but surround ourselves with people who have done the same thing?
Sure.
So that's what I say when you surround yourself with people that can be vulnerable, admit that they're wrong, but say, help me get better.
Yep.
That's empowering. Yeah,
and I think that's important. I think if you, I've never had this personally happen to me, but I've certainly heard stories of people that, so-and-so went to church. What are they doing going to church, given their background or given their behavior or whatever. And I almost feel like saying, that's the best place for them.
Right. As opposed to where would you like them to go?
Yeah. What you want them to.
Well, I'm sure they could think of a few things.
Right.
Yeah. But it's, we should be that church.
Absolutely.
And that's the challenge, I guess, we could look at.
Yeah. And Barrett, that what you just said makes us really need to watch how we judge others. Really.
Right.
Because, we're all sinners, so we've got to be inviting to those people no matter what.
That's true, and I think as Christians too, and kind of the way you guys have couched this, we're always supposed to be trying to be better, right? We're trying to get there, and I think Jesus asks us to do that. He understands that what we are as humans, we have the human condition, and we're not him. We're striving to be like him, but we're not him. And so when you find yourself, and I'll start with Andy, but we'll probably work around the table on this. When you find yourself kind of slipping into that behavior that is probably not where you want to go, what do you do to break the pattern? What do you do to help yourself?
If I'm falling into that behavior, then a lot of times I'll just start with a prayer. Just help me break this behavior.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is a reunion group that I'm in.
Yeah.
I've got several friends that we can discuss stuff, and they will help me through things and help me say, okay, hey, buddy, you need to change that, or you need to do this. And it's really close friends that can tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And I will open up and listen to them. Whereas if somebody else told me, I might say, "What do you mean?"
What do you mean?
But yeah,
I don't have a fish on my truck. What are you talking about? So,
but prayer is kind of the first place.
all right, prayer's a good one.
Yeah.
Trinity, do you have anything?
I'm pretty self-aware, and so when I see I'm doing something that I know that I shouldn't be doing, or if I see myself doing something regularly that after a point could become a problem, I'm pretty competent to say, knock it off. But to keep on to that, it's a lot of repetition. It's saying today I'm not going to have a drink, and then tomorrow I'm not going to have a drink. Not today I'm going to have a drink because then tomorrow I can.
Right.
Weekend's
coming up. Yeah.
Right. Weekend's coming up, so I'm going to cut off this week. So I have the breathing room or whatever. Yeah. So, I think there's a lot to being aware of your failures and being aware of what you always need to be working on, and then also being able to say I've got to do this and I've got to stay on top of it. But I think with what the other guys are saying here, putting people around you that will hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And if that's your spouse or if that's a friend group or if that's a church group, whatever that is, having somebody that you can tell you're wrong and you can maybe not like hearing it, but be able to accept it and use that is a big deal. And I think if you don't have that as a community, either like say with your church or something else, you're going to struggle a lot more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Barrett, do you have that group? Do you have that small group? Or are we right here tonight?
There's a group.
There's a group,
but probably not like a group, like a reunion group or an accountability group. I'm probably need to get into ones, but probably should hang around Trinity more often is what it sounds like. But
you're setting a good example.
What I do, when I get self-aware or as I've gotten older, I'm so old now these days. I turned 40 next month, so
everything goes when you turn.
I pulled a calf muscle the other day.
I hurt my back.
Terrible. I couldn't walk for 24 hours. So
it's just the start. Just the start.
Yeah. My conscience sets in more and more as of almost reaching 40 now. And then one thing I do is I keep a Bible close by.
Yeah.
And I also keep another book. So I have a Bible and a book. I'm trying to read, in tandem. And then if I've already done that and I still, are slipping or whatever you want to call it, I got to just get up and go do something.
Yes.
I got to get up and find a project, complete it, fix a task, something.
Yeah.
Do a load of laundry if that's, something so small, but get up, make myself busy, and to get my mind off whatever it is.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's very helpful. That idea of a small group, I've been blessed that I went on the walk to Emmaus back in, 2006, quite a while back. But and as a result of that, you form a reunion group or small group of guys that not necessarily the guys you went on a walk to Emmaus with, but just guys that have been through that experience. And that's been very helpful to me. But since that time, I've formed a couple of other small groups as well. One is just friends and neighbors kind of thing, and one is business related. But it's a very intentional group. We get together on a regular basis. I mean, it's either once a month, twice a month, whatever it might be. And when we sit down, it is a true sharing and accountability kind of thing. It's very, very. I won't say it's super structured, but it essentially, if you've got an issue, even something that's just minor that's bugging you, it's real easy to put it on the table. And I find that incredibly helpful. And I think it's helpful to do it. I certainly have a great relationship with Doris, and we can talk about anything. But there's certain things I just want to talk to a bunch of guys about.
Absolutely.
And there's certain things I might just want to talk to business people about, or church people, or friends and neighbors. I mean, it's a little different dynamic, I guess, in each of those groups. But it's incredibly helpful, and it certainly has helped me in terms of when I've looked at, I feel an issue coming in behind, something in the back of my brain or something stupid that I've done, and I'm going, is this really a problem, or is it just write it off that was just stupid? But it's been very, very helpful. Have you consciously? I'm going to stick this with Andy because he's in front of me.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Can you think about a time when you've come up short in this and not by accident. You know, you intentionally kind of went the wrong way, and I said, "Oh man."
Yeah. I can, and I kick myself for that. I think about it when I was younger. I did it more often, and
sure.
I kick myself a lot because, man, I shouldn't have said that to this person, or I shouldn't have acted that way.
Yep.
And it still bothers me, and it's people that I'll probably never see again.
Yeah.
I don't have a way to make it right, but it still, there are some things that still bothers me.
Yeah.
The way
That's
I
almost
have
one of those
treated
deals.
people in
You've
the
got to
past.
go back and forgive yourself, even if you'll never have the opportunity to ask someone else for forgiveness. Yeah.
But it has affected the way I try to treat people now, because I don't want to have that feeling again.
Yeah.
That
I imagine it has a lasting effect.
yeah.
So, Trinity, can you think of a time when you kind of stepped into it?
Oh,
it wasn't
yeah.
by accident. Yeah.
Oh, there's journals full of it. Yeah. So, I mean, yes, absolutely. And kind of like Andy, I have a series of, I don't know why, but there is a series of mistakes that I've made that I would say if you were to talk about them, they wouldn't even be that big a mistake. But they bother me to a point where years later, I still can't let it go. And I mean, it's like yelling at a child or just something really innocuous. Not even my kid. Like I was saying, I yell at them all the time.
Say it's
I don't feel
okay, right?
I don't feel bad about that. But things like it weirdly small things that I have to this day still been bothered that I was the person that I was to do that.
Yeah.
And those have helped me. I won't say I didn't forgive myself for them, but I remember them. And by remembering them, I hope that they drive me to be a better person in the future.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you have to hope that you learn from the mistakes you made. I think part of the reason we sin is to learn, and part of the learning is to stop you from doing it a second time.
Yeah.
And I think that, so those things are right there. Now, of course, there's some other stuff that I just probably should regret and I don't.
Yeah.
And then there's things that, were just part of growing up that you just do, or some people do.
No matter how many times people tell you, now this isn't going to work out well. You say,
absolutely,
do it anyway. Yeah. So this kind of ties to that, and I'm going to ask Barrett this one. And this is kind of the last question, but what role does grace play for you in breaking these habits and really changing to becoming the man that God really wants you to be?
Receiving or giving grace?
Well, I think it's a two-way deal. Certainly receiving would be a big one.
Giving, I feel like I'm pretty good at giving. I'm usually not one to hold a grudge for more than, a short period of time. So I try to give grace as much as possible. I guess one of those things I was talking about earlier, just growing older, and having more experience in life with different types of people and also different groups of people.
Yeah.
Now that, once you have a few kids,
absolutely,
you're exposed to a lot of different groups of people that you never thought you would be a part of. So, and you're not always going to mesh with those people.
Exactly.
So I found myself kind of just keeping my mouth shut sometimes. And that alone is giving somebody grace. And then,
absolutely.
And then afterwards, like, when I'm out of that environment or situation, I kind of think back and I said, if I were to have said something, or if I say something now through text or whatever, is it really going to make anything better by doing it? It's going to make myself feel better, but is it going to actually solve a problem or probably not? The answer is no. Usually the answer is no. So I'm getting better at it. I will say that about just giving someone grace and allowing them to act the way they're going to, even if I don't agree with it.
Yep. Yeah. Andy, have you got any grace moments?
Well, I tell you, realizing how much grace I need helps me give more grace. That is a gift from God.
I was one of those
Amen.
I was one of those kids growing up at when we went through confirmation. The ladies doing confirmation had a term they use. It's EGR, extra grace required. And I was kind of that kid. So I was definitely in that deal. In Trinity, if you have a take on that,
I do. First off, Grace is a big part of mine because that's my daughter's name. Oh. And so when I read this question for the first time, I said, well, what does Grace have to do with how I act? And I thought a lot because
she's watching.
I have to, I have to have grace for her and because of her, I suppose. But, raising kids has always been one of those challenges where you see the people you used to be in your children, and you realize how frustratingly annoying you must have been at certain times in your life to other people.
Wow.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think watching my kids grow up and having my wife go, they're just like you, is a moment.
Your wife says that to you too?
Yeah. Oh, all the time. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I definitely think as I've gotten older, to Barrett's point, I thought of you when you were saying this. The Queen of England, or at least on the Crown, the Queen of England has a saying that says, "Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? And does it need to be said by me?"
Yeah.
And she asks herself those 3 questions before she puts her mouth into anything, because they're just a good way to check yourself and see, should I even be, like, why would I need to say that? And if I do need to say it, like, if the 3 answers yes to all 3 of them, then you should probably say it. But otherwise, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, that's true.
That requires a little thought before you react.
Yeah.
But putting that thought in keeps your foot out of your mouth quite a bit.
Yeah, that's where social media fails us. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
People just spout off immediately. Well, I look at it in terms, too, of receiving grace and giving grace. And grace and forgiveness are kind of tied together. And I had an episode, and I may have relayed it on one of these podcasts, but I had a guy that worked for me for years, and he didn't know, apparent to me, he had a drug and alcohol problem. It never really interfered with his work that I could ever see, and I didn't even know anything about it. And he had left our company, went to work for another company, and years later he came back to me, and he says, "I've got to sit down and talk to you on some things." He said, "When I worked for you, here's a few things that happened." And he had taken some stuff from the office. He was in a remote office. He wasn't in our office. He had taken minor things. He'd taken a water bottle. I mean, one of those big water bottles that, water cooler kind of things. A couple of other things, small, to me, very small things. But it was on his mind. He had to come back as part of his 12-step program and really confess this to me, and ask for my grace. And I almost was dismissive. I almost just said, it's not a big deal. I forgot all about it. And I would have never known any of that. It didn't affect the company. It didn't affect me. But I knew it was so important to him that I had to make a very conscious effort to forgive him and extend grace to him. And I think that did a lot for him. It certainly did a lot for me when I thought about it later. But that was the deal. I almost just was going to dismiss it right away. Luckily, my part of my brain kicked in, and that didn't happen. So well, guys, thanks so much. This has been outstanding. It seems like I've had you guys on before. We learn a little more about each of you guys each time you come here. So
unfortunately,
yeah, there you go.
Pretty soon the book will come out, and then the mini series. But again, thanks for joining Men in Progress.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
So there you have it, episode 15 of Men in Progress. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and that you'll join us again in April when our topic will be Money and Christianity, right in time for tax season. Thanks again to Barrett Pliler, Andy Juett, and Trinity Vaughn for joining me and sharing their wisdom with our listeners. Thanks for listening to Men in Progress from Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church in Flower Mound, Texas. I'm Dave Casey. We'll see you next time.
This episode of the Men in Progress podcast is sponsored by Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church, where our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're in or near Flower Mound, Texas on any Sunday morning, we would love to welcome you to any of the Trietsch services. Or you can follow our services anytime on our Facebook page or at tmumc.org.